welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to our session. This is the document management for ITSM and change enablement session. So you guys buckle up, strap in on your seatbelts, and we're going to go for a little ride here. So what are we going to do today? So we are going to do an introduction here. So my name is Ed Gale. I am a Senior Sales Solution Architect at AppFire, and I have the fabulous Melissa Brown on with us as well. So we will be your cruise directors on this presentation here. So just a little bit of housekeeping here. So please feel free to ask any questions or comments throughout the presentation here. I am very much not a slide person. I was talking to one of the other presenters today, and I think they had like 36 slides, and I have 8, but we're going to do some live demo. So I much prefer to converse and talk and ask questions and show things and get my hands dirty versus talking at you with slides. So that's just my preference. So please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat or put them in the Q&A. Melissa will be there monitoring that. We'll have a couple polls for you to check out as well. And then, yeah, so that's it. So feel free to chime in. So we're going to talk a little bit about high-level ITSM and change management, and then kind of where does document management figure in to that whole process. And then the majority of this session is going to be a live demo. So we're all going to cross our fingers and hope that my internet stays up. It should, hopefully, unless Murphy's Law kicks in. And then we'll have some questions based on everything that you saw in the demo, because I'm going to throw a lot at you. And then we can talk about any of the specifics and bring stuff back up if you want to. So, and I think that's the housekeeping. So let's get started. So ITSM and ESM. So ITSM is just a big concept that a lot of organizations are utilizing today. And you can bring in ITIL for your framework and your governance, and you have your different slices of ITSM. So you have your specific business use cases such as problem management, knowledge management, change management, incident management, asset management. It's just a very broad concept. And with a lot of processes that can be implemented within an organization. And so today we are going to kind of hone in on the change management piece of that. So we're going to look at, a typical change management scenario, and what that may look like is something like this from a workflow perspective. So maybe on a change management perspective, you have a new feature release that's going to be released for your application, or you have an update, or you have a bug fix. Any of those that are going to entail some sort of code change and potential deployment and outage or maintenance windows is something that you're going to have to define in your process here, so you can minimize the amount of downtime and or risk involved with that change. So if you look at this, kind of your typical use case for change management, we've got a request for change. We'll go through a review. We're going to see what kind of change it is. You go through a planning process. Is that change approved? So most often organizations have a CAB or a change advisory board that is the governing body to say, hey, yes, this change can go through, or no, we need more information about this change, and we need to make sure that we have everything lined up as it should be before we will approve this. So right now it's going to be denied. Once it's approved, we go through the process of implementing, smoke testing, validation, and making sure it's done. So what we're going to do within the demo is we're going to look at couple different variations of this workflow. So you can see where we have a standard change, we kind of bypass a lot of different operations or activities. So a lot of times within your organization, you may have standard changes that are very, very minor changes. You're updating a typo. You're just making a little color change to a button on your app, something that's not very impactful. And so you may have those pre-approved by your CAB committee. And so when those changes come through, you don't need to go through the normal processes, and so you'll have those pre-approved, and we can go ahead and do some automation to bypass that and go into the implementation phase. Whereas your other changes, such as normal or emergency changes, you want to go through the normal planning stage, and so that's when they would go into the CAB for review and to make sure that we have all the resources assigned, we have all the risk analyzed, and that we can go in and get that approved. And then you're going to have release notes that are going to be associated with that and get those through to the implementation and the validation process. So that's kind of the typical change management. Obviously, you can have any number of variations of this depending on your organization and how you utilize change management. Theoretically, you could get change management into your ESM applications as well. So for HR or legal, for document reviews, document updates, you could actually implement a version of this as well. But for this demo, we're going to stay within ITSM, and we're going to go with the typical, hey, we have a feature that we need to release kind of thing. So with that, you get to see 80s rock ed, and we're going to rock a demo here. So if you see up here, I'm trying to keep these very organized. So we have my different components here, Slack, JSM, Jira Software, Confluence, and presentation is what we're in. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to show you the process as we've defined it within our collaboration space here. So this is our overall process for change management. So we have our organization utilizes Slack. So we're going to utilize Slack to submit our change requests. We're going to have the ability to look at our change requests guide. So when we create our change requests within Slack, they will be created within JSM. And then we're going to have some processes within JSM that says, hey, when I go to a certain status, I want to automatically create my change request documentation in Confluence. We're going to have some automation within Confluence that says, hey, I need the CAB group to look at this and approve this document. And when it's approved, we're going to automatically publish it to the approval space. So we'll be utilizing two different spaces within Confluence, a review space and an approval space. If it's in the review space, it's kind of in process. The CAB needs to verify it, and then when it's approved, it'll go over to publish to our approved space so that we know that, hey, that one's ready to go. So we'll also look at linking our issues and then performing an automatic release that will automatically create our release notes for that specific deployment, and we're going to attach those to the change request as well. So we'll have that attachment to the change request with the release notes, so we have it all in one place. And then we're going to automatically send over some notifications back to Slack through this whole process that says, hey, it's been released, we've got it updated, the service request is closed. So we kind of get everything back into the end user knows everything that is done from that perspective within the Slack. So that is our overall flow. And again, we are going to be utilizing this workflow that we saw earlier. So this, again, is the typical workflow. We're going to submit a change. We're going to review. We're going to interrogate what kind of change it is. Is it standard? We're going to automate it. If it's not, we're going to go through the typical process and get it approved and then moved on and deployed. And then after everything is done, we're going to come back and do a retro as far as, hey, how did it go? What went good? Did anything go wrong? What do we need to keep doing to get better at this process? All right, so let us jump over to Slack. And so I have a change request channel here. So what we're going to do first is show the automation of a standard change, so a very small change. So maybe we just have to update a button. We need to move a field around. So I am going to type in, we need a change request for UI button update. And so our Slack, we've got an automatic reply that's going to come back, and we can see here that we have the ability to create a request. So I am going to select a standard change since this is a very minor update, and this is going to be a So we'll say we're updating the button. We're going to change the color, whatever we need to. So we'll upgrade that. We'll hit submit. And so now our ticket has been created in JSM. And if we go over to JSM real quick, and we look at that actual ticket that we just created, we can see that it is indeed in awaiting implementation. So if I pull up the workflow real quick, just to show you that, hey, it came in, we created a request, we came into review, and we saw that it was a standard change per our CAB processes and policy. Those are pre-approved. We do not need to go through the normal processing, so we automatically put that down into the awaiting implementation. So that's a nice little automation that you can do within your change management process. So the next one we're going to do is we need a change request.
Hey, Ed, big question for you. What you're using right now is Slack. Is that an AppFire app that you're using, and which one?
So it is. So it is an AppFire app. It is our Help Desk Plus app that integrates Slack with JSM. So you can do it. It imitates the fields as you would see them in the JSM portal. So we could actually be doing this in the JSM portal as well, but a lot of corporations are utilizing either Teams or Slack. So for this demo, I just want to make sure that we kind of encompass that this is kind of a typical way that people could utilize Slack to create and submit their change request application or tickets to JSM, and then if they actually wanted to, they could just stay here in Slack and monitor work things. So it is one of our apps there. All right, so for this next one, we need a change request for please CMJ UI 1 UI updates for search functionality. I'm going to submit that. And we come back, and again, we can see that we have a reply here. So one thing from a documentation perspective or a document management perspective is that you want to make sure that your users always know, what's your policy? What are the required fields? What do you need to make sure that you have to submit for your change request? And so, with this application, we have a little bit of AI in the background that says, I see you're talking about a change request. Well, hey, here's some information about if you want to make sure you understand what is required, go ahead and click on this article and it'll take you over there and say, hey, here's our change request policy, here's our requirements, here's the required fields, standard change versus normal change. So standard changes are pre-approved. They're going to go through to an automated or go to implementation. So you can just have this set up. Again, if you're utilizing Slack, again, you can do this in JSON portal, but if you're utilizing Slack, you can have this set up so that your documentation is always available to your users from this perspective, so they know exactly what to do when submitting a change. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and create another request. And this time, we are going to make it a normal change. We're going to say it's large, since we're impacting the search functionality. New functionality that we're going to apply to the search function. And we're going to say submit. And here we go. Now we've got it totally created within JSM. But again, if I wanted to, I'm a Slack user, Slack Power user. I don't want to switch context. I could stay here. But for this demo, we're going to go ahead and close that and pop over to JSM. Let's look at all changes. And so we can see, yep, here's the one that we just created, and it's in a review status. So remember, if it was a standard change, I would have automatically gone through to implementation, but we are in the review stage. And so the service desk agent can come in and say, okay, we've got a change request coming in. It's a normal request. We need to get it to the planning. So what that means is that we need to get it to the CAB review and go through the normal processes that we defined as far as for the normal change. Now, as part of the normal process, we need to make sure that the approval is done within a reasonable amount of time, so we don't run into issues like we get an approval too late, so now we can't hit the deployment window, or there's dependencies upon this release that is going to start pushing back other releases. So what we have here is we have implemented an SLA automatically when we've gone to the planning transition or status. So now that it's in the hands of the CAB or the change advisory board, we want to make sure that they approve this in a reasonable amount of time. So if I look at the SLA real quick, I can see that it's for 8 hours. And so it's from the planning to the authorization status. And that is where the CAB group is going to be doing the review and approving this. And so I have also a notification on this SLA that says if we get to 2 hours within the SLA of being breached, I'm going to start sending notifications to the CAB group that says, hey, we need to approve this or decline this so we know what to do, and we can start making plans as far as the deployment for deployment windows in that respect. So the other thing that we did when we hit the planning status is that we automated the creation of our change request document. So we need to create the document that the change advisory board needs to look at. So when we did that, we automatically created, and this is incident serve 103. So if we go over to our Confluence review space, let me refresh. We can see that we have serve 103 change requests. So what I did is that I created a template for my change request. So that's another kind of key thing that you can do from a document management perspective is that you can, and Melissa disagrees with me on this, I think templatize is a word. She does not.
Not a word.
I'm going to say it is a word. So you can templatize your change request documents and your release notes so that they're consistent. So what I did is that I created a template within my space that is change management. And so if I edit this change management, and you can make this whatever it is. So whatever your change request document needs to contain, you can create this as a template. And so that every time that it comes in, you're going to have that same template. And so we can see from this perspective, I'm going to show you one that was actually already filled out. So you can see that, now that the change owner comes in, and we can put in all the relevant information. We'll put in the deployment plan, rollback plan, test plan. What's the communication strategy? So who's the deployment manager, the technical team, the QA team that's going to do the smoke testing after deployment to make sure that's a checkout. And then post-implementation, what are we going to do? In this case, we're going to utilize a retro board within a collaboration app that we can come back and say, hey, did this go okay, kind of thing. So again, that's your change request documentation, and we have made a template of it so that it is repeatable. Every time we make a change request, it's going to be in this format, and we're going to have this. And so the CAB can come in and say, yeah, hey, this looks cool. And to that effect, what we've done is we've used another app to actually put a workflow behind these change request documents. So every change control document that comes in here is going to have a workflow behind it. And in this case, it's a very simple in review and approved. You could have in review, approved, declined, any sort of workflow that you would need for the specific change request per your organization's policies or your CAB group. In this case, the CAB needs to come in and just approve it for it to be made official. And once it's approved, we have automation that's going to actually move it from our review site to our approved site. So if I go back here, you can see I am change management review. And if I go over here, and Melissa is going to do her magic, we can see right now the change request document is in review state. So Melissa, as part of the CAB committee, is going to go in and she's going to review it. She's going to put a comment in so that we have that CAB approval.
You are approved and ready to go, sir.
We are, look at that. So now we are in approved. So we have executed that workflow for this change request document. And if I go in here, I can see that, yes, it's been approved. So our CAB has approved it. If I look at the activity, I have a full audit of the detail of everything that has happened within this document. I've got the comments, who's approved it, when it was approved. So we have the full picture of what's happened within that change request document. So I told you, like, once it's been approved, we have some automation that says, cool, it's been approved. Now let's go ahead and move it over to our approved Confluence space. And so if I come over here and I do a refresh, I can now see that, yes, indeed, I do have my change request serve 103. It has been approved. Again, this would be filled out, obviously. I just didn't want to spend time to bore you with me typing in stuff here. But so that was automation. So now that it is in this space, we know that it is indeed approved. The CAB has improved it. So now we can go on with our service request to get it going into the next phase. It's been approved. So we're going to go ahead and put this into an authorized phase, which is actually going to move it to awaiting implementation. So now we have waiting implementation. So the one thing that I forgot to do in my service request is that I wanted to go ahead and link the issues that are in this specific service request issue for the release. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. And these are UI updates for the search functionality. I just meant to go ahead and link those beforehand. So now we have the service request for this update, for this release, with these linked issues. We've got the changed approved from the CAB committee. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to go over to Jira Software, and we're going to actually go ahead and perform the release of these issues so that we know that now they can be deployed. So they're waiting implementation. We're going to go through. I'm actually going to move these guys to done. I've actually got some automation that when the stories are moved to done, the epic will automatically move to done. Let's see. Yep. So that worked. And so for release CMJ UI1, if I go back to the project here and I go to releases, there's my release CMJ UI1. These are my links that we have in there. Oh, that's old one. So now I'm going to release these issues, and we go through here and release, and we're going to create release notes. So now we're going to create the release notes, and here's where we can automate the creation into Confluence, and then we're going to physically link them back to the change request document that was approved by the CAB group. So if we say release, we're going to put it in Confluence, and we're actually going to put it to the approved one. So that is the serve 103 change request in the approved space. I'm going to create in Confluence. And so here we can see that this was the published change request that was approved, moved over to our approved space, and now we have our release notes that are associated with this release also linked to that change request document. And you can go in and we can update these release notes. We can put in any more of the, like, hey, here's the functionality that was included as part of this issue. So we can tweak these if we need to, but we have them associated so they're together. So from an audit perspective, we've got the change request, we've got the release notes. Now we know what's going on for the specific change. And since I released those, I did the release. If we go back to Slack, you can see that I have a webhook in here that said, okay, it's released. Let me go ahead and notify the change request channel and the folks in there that says, hey, it's been officially released. We're ready to go. And then from that perspective, we can actually go into the service ticket, do the implementation, and then when we're implemented, we can do the completed. And then we can say done. And we can go back to Slack again, and then we can see how everything is going to be updated within here that says, hey, yep, service 103 has been marked resolved, so we can see where we opened it, it was created. We see the release notification, we see the close notification, so we kind of closed the loop on that. Yeah. So I kind of threw a lot of stuff at you, so let's go back to the process and walk through it again real quick so we can see if we have any questions. So our organization uses Slack. We have a Slack channel that allows users to submit their change requests. We have the ability to point them to the change request policies and procedures. From within that, we create the change request. We have automation within that that says, hey, I see this is a change request. It's a normal change request type. I need to go ahead and create the documentation, or it's a standard type. I can go ahead and do the move the status to implementation. When we create the change request document, we had a workflow behind that so that the CAB committee could go in and they can actually do the approval of that. And once it's approved, it would move it over into the official production or approved space so that we know the CAB has approved it, it's been moved, we have that record. We go in and we go to the release for that specific change. We execute the release, and then that allows us to link the release notes for that to the specific change request document. Sends notifications back to Slack that says everything's been done. And so, from a document management perspective, we've got the full trail of here's our request, here's the change details, it was approved. Here's our release notes. We have everything from a log and audit perspective that says, here's what was done. And then after the deployment, what we could do is that we could actually go in and do a retrospective. And so we've got a retrospective from a start, stop, and continue perspective here. And so we can see that Melissa's in here as well. So she is actually helping out with the retrospective here. So we can look at, from this deployment, you can have multiple collaborators in here that says, hey, from this deployment, what worked, what didn't go so well, and then based on all that, what are we doing that can make sure that we are, as Melissa says, relentlessly improving the process. And so again, from a document management perspective, that's part of the overall process that says, okay, let's make sure that we track everything that we've done, get the feedback, and provide that feedback back into the loop. So, you get into the actual whole DevOps discussion of ITSM, where you have the infinite circle where you get the feedback and you come back in and that feeds into the next change request or deployment. All right, so let me stop right there and see if we have any questions so far.
Hey, Ed, can you give us a little bit more of an overview of how whiteboards is used with Jira and Confluence in the standalone application?
Yeah, so we have Jira, so we have whiteboards for Jira and for Confluence, and it's a collaboration application where, like we saw, Melissa was in here, so you can have multiple people within here doing your collaboration. It has templates that you can utilize. So from an ITSM perspective or an Agile perspective, you can come in here and you can actually insert any number of templates that apply to your specific action that you're doing. So if you're doing any kind of agile, you could come in here and do any of your backlogging or vision board. So from a retrospective perspective, we chose the start, stop, continue. But it lets you do the collaboration in here. And the cool thing is that if I wanted to, I could come in here and I could say, well, let me go ahead and make this a Jira issue. And if I wanted, and I could come in here and go to, this is going to be an IT operations, and it's going to be a task, and say create. And so now this card has been made into a Jira ticket from whiteboards. So if we go over to Jira software and actually those IT operations, we can see that that issue was created using more AppFire apps. So it's pretty cool from a collaboration perspective, and you can see that for this demo, I wanted to document the change management process, and then within service management, I wanted to document the change management workflow from that perspective. And then we can also perform our retros within the same area. So we have that kind of the context closeness that, okay, this is what happened, this is what we use. Now we can go back and say, here's what's working for this specific type of change request. And then, we have that always available. And again, create issues from anything from within here, and then you have the multiple user collaboration.
Yes, and then also say if Ed wants to reuse this diagram, he can actually also turn this into a template that's available to himself or even available to everybody within the organization so they can take this over and over again without having to recreate it every single time.
We can share it, invite people to come in, templatize it. Again, I think templatize is a word. But yes, Melissa's correct. We can make this an actual template so you can reuse it within. So you may have different change management processes or different document management processes per a different use case. So you may have different documentation requirements for an incident management versus this typical change management versus an asset management versus something else. Well, anything else from an ITSM or an ESM perspective. I can see this in ESM being very useful for your financial, legal, or HR. Hey, here's our documentation, policies, and procedures. Here's our flow. Here's what it should be like, and have that represented from a visual perspective and documented in a template.
All right, are you ready for another question?
Sure. What we got?
All right. Do you know of ways to automatically link tickets to Confluence when they are made?
Link tickets to Confluence when they are made. I know on the reverse, we can go Confluence to Jira. So automation for Jira will let you create a Confluence page from a Jira ticket, or from when a Jira issue is created. So is that what we're talking about, or am I not understanding that correctly?
Daniel, is that answering your question? Or if you like, you can also add an example and we can talk through it.
Yeah, so if I go to project settings, there's a couple ways you can do this. So if we do the native automation for Jira, you can come in here and you can do templates. And so there are going to be some where you can do create, maybe it's not a template, but here I will show, actually, let me show you my rule for creating the Confluence one. So let's go to automation. So the one thing that we need to get working is from our perspective is that, when that page is approved on Confluence, be able to get that to come back over to Jira and actually do the transition to that associated Jira issue to the next transition for you. That's what we're working on getting to work next. It's not there yet, but that will be actually pretty cool to have that. So here's Confluence page. So I've got it when it's transitioned, and it's this type of issue. You can go ahead and create a page in Confluence. And so when you create, or you can, the trigger could be when issue was created. You could create a page. So if issue was created, you can then have the same thing where you can create a page in Confluence. What you have to do is actually connect your Confluence connection. So you have to make sure that you tell automation which one you're going to. In this case, if I'm going to my sandbox, if I wanted to change that, I could come in here and choose the appropriate Confluence connection and hit that. So, but this was super easy to set up as far as that automation of creating your. So I'm telling it to create the page in Confluence, but when I get to Confluence, I have a template defined that says, "Hey, you're going to create this page. Now I want you to use this template." Since it's a change control request, so it was kind of cool to automatically create that page, but then use this template and then make sure that it's consistent.
All right, to give you a little bit more, Ed, to go off of, Daniel says that to help you with that question is they have a listener set up in Confluence to create a ticket when a page is created. They're wanting to automatically link the Confluence page to the newly created Jira ticket.
Yeah, that's the piece I was telling you about, the Confluence to the Jira link. That's the thing that is not there yet. So, even if we go to automation for Confluence, where's that? Yeah, automation. So I've got an archiving one. So if a page has been inactive for X amount of days, I'm going to go ahead and archive it. So that kind of falls into with these change requests. If you're a big organization, you're going to have change requests going. It's going to fill up that space. So you want to archive them off at a specific time. So this is an automatic way to archive off after, say, 30 days. I just want to archive off all my pages that I've got approved. So that's one way of doing it there. But even in automation for Jira, you can create a new. Get some. So you can create a new issue, but you cannot update. Where's it at? Create, yeah. So you can create an issue in Jira, but the update is not there yet. So I bet you we could probably figure out how to do some kind of webhook or some kind of, basically do the REST API. You would have to get the updated Jira, the target Jira issue key, something that would be able to tell it to say, hey, here's what I want to go update. So again, that's not quite there yet natively or within that automation that we have that we were using.
All right, are you ready for a Kamala work question?
Sure.
All right. So the big question is, how is status change in Confluence pages implemented / done? Is it read from somewhere from Jira?
Status pages, statuses, and Kamala?
So
No.
The status of the Confluence page, I think you should go back over the workflow that you have built within Kamala about how that changes the status on that.
Yes. So this is specific to Confluence. So there's no linkage between the workflow for this page in Confluence with what's in Jira. So what we're working on is being able to have so say you create a page within Kamala and you have metadata on that, such as when we created this change management page, that we also have linked issues. And so we would be able to get this information off of that, and be able to, you can publish an event within Kamala when it's approved. And based on that event, you can actually, send a webhook over, or use another application to send that information over via REST API that says, hey, here's my Jira issue. I want to go ahead and update that now because we've hit approved. But these workflows are specific to Kamala and to the actual page within Confluence, if that answers the question, hopefully.
I believe so.
And then you can add more states. I could add another state if I wanted to say is, decline, denied, red. And then we can, move around with the transitions if we wanted to add or remove. In this case, for this review, you can see we have an approval. We look at the approval. I've got it so that it goes to our CAB approvers. So in that case, me and Melissa are part of this group. So we got notifications in our email that says, hey, you got something to approve. But you also remember back in our service desk, we have this SLA that it was met, but we also have that SLA that would alert the CAB that says, hey, you need to approve this change because we need to get it going, kind of thing. So all right, so we got any more questions, Melissa, before I switch back?
Not yet.
Okay.
A few more minutes.
So based on that, let's talk about some best practices from the demo we just saw. So define and document change management processes. So we saw that, I defined our process within whiteboards here. So I defined the process, I defined the workflow, we defined a policies and procedures page that we can access. So again, defining and documenting our change management processes. And even specifically, even for the change management type. So is it a standard change? Is it a normal change? Is it an emergency change? Are we going to have different processes for those? Define and document key roles and responsibilities. So who's your CAB group, your change advisory board? What do they need to do? Like we said, we defined that they need to approve the change request. They need to approve it within a specific amount of time. Not only that, on our change request document, we had defined our roles and responsibilities as far as who's the deployment manager, who's going to be the technical team supporting the deploy, who's going to be the QA person to do the smoke test and make sure that everything is verified from that perspective. Oops, sorry. Templatize. Again, I'm going to swear that's a word. Create a request for change template for your change requests. So that's standard. So every time you're going to know what needs to be put in there. Get your rollback plans in there, your deployment plans, your communication plans. They never change. They're always set within that template. Same thing for your release notes. Make sure you get that in there from a template perspective, and then you can actually add to it to say, we need more information as far as what's the specific details that are being changed for this specific version. Automate the change management process. So you saw a couple places where we were actually doing some of that automation. So we automated some of the transitions based on the type. We automated document creation. We automated approval, document movement. So there's several different places where we're able to leverage automation to make the process a little more efficient, and then kind of take out some of those human steps that could take some time from that perspective. Automating SLA notifications for the CAB, so making sure it's very efficient. And along that lines, apply SLAs to change management approvals. You just don't want them hanging out there. You want to make sure that your CAB is on it as far as getting these approvals, because if you're in a large organization, you're going to have, depending on the deployment, you're going to have deployment windows. You're going to have to get teams set up for that, for support. And then if we got those backed up, it's going to prove pretty inefficient for the organization. log all changes and when they occur. So we did a pretty good job of making sure that we had from start to finish what the change was, the responses. We had the approval of the change request, the audit of that. We've got everything from end to end. We've pretty much got a timestamp and who did what from that perspective. And then in addition to the retrospective, we've got that view of everything that's happened, so we can go back and take a look if we have to. Communication plan. We probably didn't talk about that as much as we should have, but definitely from a communication plan, we should definitely make sure that everything is identified as who's going to be doing what, when, who's the lead, how do we get a hold of everyone in case we need to. Rollback plan obviously needs to be part of that, and again, we put that within our template of our change request document. Again, depending on the change, your rollback plan could be a little more complex as far as as the database changes. That's going to be a pretty more complex one as far as, all right, we got to make a backup, make sure the backup is available, get your SQL ready from that perspective. And then again, like we said at the end, lead retrospectives for relentless improvements to make sure that we're getting that feedback and we're making sure that we're continuously improving on our change management process and within our document management actions. And that was it. I know that's a lot. I kind of opened the fire hose on you guys, but is there any more questions, Melissa, or?
There's no more questions, but there are some feelings about the new automation rules for Jira, and it's a sad face moment.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming. And if you have any questions on any of this, again, I'm not a big slide guy. I like to talk through everything. So that usually entails me talking a lot and throwing a lot of stuff at you. But if you have any questions, you can reach out to me at ed.gale@appfire.com. You can also go check out our ITSM solution, where you'll see several of the apps that I used within this demo, including the Help Desk Plus and the whiteboards. But it has more information out there if you just wanted to go see that. Other than that, I would like to thank the lovely Melissa Brown for putting up with me and helping out with this presentation. But other than that, I think we're all good.
Yeah, and don't forget to check out Brant with his presentation. I believe it's up next around ESM and ITSM, and then also
That's right.
Scott White with his stuff too, with the Jira DevOps integration. So, and
Yes.
Thanks everybody for joining us, and have the great time with the rest of the sessions today.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.